Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, you know, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Rise up! Rise up!
This is the Rise Up See Red podcast, all about the Arizona Cardinals and the NFL, featuring insider and outsider perspectives. Enjoy the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Now here are your hosts, Jess Root and Seth Cox.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast, the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. I'm your host, Jess Root from CardsWire.com, the USA Today NFL wire site that covers the Arizona Cardinals, recording with my co-host, Seth Cox from RevengeOfTheBirds.com, SB Nation's Arizona Cardinals site, as we continue through our draft preview series, episode 654. This is, as Seth, you and I were kind of planning the episodes, when I kind of gave you the outline of the calendar, I completely missed the defensive backs. So we've got two positional shows left. We got this one. We've got next week our early show. The late show, we'll talk about 7-round plans for the Cardinals in the draft, and then we'll have our mock draft, and then we'll be going crazy that weekend, writing all sorts of content. Seth, defensive backs. We're going to talk defensive backs and linebackers, and you were telling me earlier that, you know, I guess it's good that if of all the positions to do, because the safety class is highly unimpressive, except for 2 or 3 names, is it not?
Yeah, and this is, you know, obviously, I think first off, we have to acknowledge it's not really a position of need, barring a trade. So,
right,
unless they make a trade and move on from Jalen Thompson, unlikely to move on from Budda Baker with the new contract. I mean, I can't see, and we like Rabbit, we like Dadrian Taylor Demerson quite a bit, but I can't see a team like trading assets for him.
No. And that's a position. So it's one of the positions that, while there are a couple of very good safety prospects, the Cardinals are not in the market for a first-round safety and likely not a second-round safety. And so we'll talk about those guys. There are 2 guys who are the more or less considered the first-round guys. Can you talk about Malachi Starks first? Because he's lost value relatively to the draft world, because his combine, like, he's got the tape, he's got the build. The combine was just so blah. There was nothing impressive about it.
You know who he kind of reminds me of in a lot of ways, and I mean this as a compliment. I don't mean this as a shot, but who was the kid out of Bama that went to the Bears a couple years ago? Had a couple really good, like, all-pro level seasons, and then kind of just fell off the face of the earth. I don't know who he's with now, if I'm being completely honest. But a couple of seasons ago, he was and that's who this guy reminds me of. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, but it's obviously not working. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing when you look at
Eddie Jackson.
Eddie Jackson, thank you so much. You know, that's the thing when you look at guys like this, right? They come across from an athletic standpoint as, you know, just guys. We saw a guy that was fantastic for the Arizona Cardinals that didn't get drafted, because a lot of times that's what happens, right? These 6 foot, 200-pound safeties are a dime a dozen. And so when you look at a guy like Malachi Starks, he comes in at 6 foot, just under 6'1", just under 200 pounds. And, you know, everything but his broad jump is average. His 10-yard split wasn't bad. 4.5 40, 56th percentile. Vertical jumps 60th percentile, so slightly above average. Broad jump was really, really good. I don't want to take anything away from him. And we've just seen that those guys, they're very dime a dozen in terms of athleticism. So then all of a sudden you're literally having to say, like, how much football does this guy know? Because he doesn't check the athlete boxes. And again, when we talk about this, we're talking relative, right? Like, he's not a great athlete relative to his peers. Doesn't mean he's not
right.
athlete.
He has average athleticism for his position, as opposed to these guys and frankly, the other guy who might Malachi Starks wasn't he for like a year and a half a consensus safety one,
yeah,
only to have what's his name, Nick Emanwari. One, he's ginormous, 6'3", 220. Like, remember Isaiah Simmons? He's built almost like Isaiah Simmons. He's not quite as heavy, but he's as athletic as Isaiah Simmons was coming out of college. He's 6'3", 220, 4.38 40, 20 reps of the 43-inch vertical leap at 6'3", and then 11'6". I guess, what does that come to? 138-inch broad. That's absurd.
They're video game numbers, man, and it's just not something that you see very often, and that's what So, and then you have two things from that, right? So you have, okay, is he Obi Melifonwu? The freak athlete out of UConn back in 2017, never really made anything of his career, was out of the league in 2018. Second round pick, by the way. To be fair, he was on the Patriots Super Bowl team, but, out of the league after 2 seasons. Or is he, Jeremy Chin? Is he one of these guys that have turned out to be these just completely dominant, really good players? And so that's again the thing you're having to go is, like, are we going to get Eddie Jackson, Javon Holland out of Malachi Starks, or are we going to get Lewis Seen? Remember, Lewis Seen was a Georgia safety drafted in the first round, and he's started 0 games in his career, played in 11 games, and a first round pick, guys. Like, it's just one of those situations that you look at, and that's what you have to go with. And so for the Cardinals, it's great that they don't have to worry about either of these guys. They're very, I think both of them are going to be good players. Starks, I see really he can fill that Javon Holland, Eddie Jackson role. Like, he's not a superior athlete, but he has superior instincts on tape, and it shows up. Emanwari is more of a gamble to me. Like, he's a freak athlete. You put him in like I said, that Jeremy Chin, Derwin James category, but are you going, like, obviously those are the high end, that's the best case scenario out of those guys. Are you going to end up getting him, or are you going to end up getting the litany, the minefield of Obi Melifonwu, going even back further, TJ McDonald, Josh Jones, like all these guys that everybody drooled over, but never really made it in the league. I mean, Josh Jones, remember, coming out of North Carolina State, second round pick to the Packers. Everybody's like, oh, the Packers with that secondary, right? They're going to, and ended up playing for 4 teams, got a little bit of run with the 5 teams, and got a little run with the Seattle Seahawks. But I mean, in 6 years, he started 29 games. Like, that's the thing with Emanwari that you're going to have to look at and decipher. And then from there, it's really interesting because there's not much in this class. Xavier Watts, the talented safety out of Notre Dame, he came in extremely average, and his numbers. I mean, came in under 6 feet, came in just over 200 pounds, with really, really small hands, something you don't see too often from defensive backs, right? So, and again, he's being looked at as a late second, early third. From there, you have Andrew Makuba, who I think, didn't he just have his pro day the other day? With the rest of Texas, and I don't think he tested very well, if I remember right. And you look at him, he's a little undersized, right? 5'11", 186, real short arms. Had a good 40 at 4.45, but nothing like that you're gonna write home about where you're like, oh, this is a guy. I mean, he's very, again, kind of just a guy, and that's why you're seeing him go from a early day 2 pick to, I've seen him all the way in late round 3 to day 3. I do think we need to mention a local guy that tested really well, and local as in high school, Lathan Ransom out of Ohio State. Came in, checks a lot of the boxes in terms of the size, right? That we just talked about. Over 6 feet, he came in over 200 pounds. Again, these guys have really small hands, but I think at his pro day, Ransom ran a sub 4.5, and he might have even been faster than that. I'm double checking he's a guy out of South Point down in Tucson. And you look at him, he came in right at 4.5. So, you look at him as a guy that he's going to go on day 3. Like, I would be really surprised if he went on the second day of the draft. But a local guy, great teammate, really, really good special teams guy, checks all of those boxes. So, it's one of those situations where you look at, and you say, okay, like, he's a guy that, based on how safeties get drafted, and this is something we talk about every year, right? If you can be a special teams guy immediately and potentially turn into a starter, that's great. But if you're just a special teams guy forever, nobody really cares, right?
No. On day 3 picks, if you make a career out of special teams, while you might wish you could do more as a player, if you have a 10-year career special team, let's think about this. Justin Bethel just retired. What was it, like a year ago?
Yeah.
Maybe it was this offseason. He was drafted in 2012 as out of the 6th round, wasn't it? Out of some tiny school.
Yeah.
And he was great on special teams, but the Cardinals paid him like a potential good corner, didn't work out, and then just stuck around the NFL and never made another Pro Bowl as a special teamer after he left the Cardinals, but played for another decade.
Right. I mean, you think about it, just like 12 years in the NFL is absurd. I mean, just absurd. 3-time Pro Bowler, like you said, 6th-round pick out of Presbyterian. So like that's kind of what you're looking at when you're talking about safeties, right? And in this class, it's really just the other guy that I've seen ranked highly that we should mention, Billy Bowman, the safety out of Oklahoma. But he's a little bit different, 5'10", 190. So he's kind of a more compactly built guy.
He's the Buddha, Jalen Thompson, and Rabbit. All those guys are smaller than your typical safeties.
Yeah, and super, super short arms. And it shows up on film, like a guy that is a very aggressive downhill player, but misses a lot of tackles. And you go, how do we fix that? And it's like, I don't know if you can. Like, you're talking about a guy that's literally in the 0 percentile for arm length. 28.5 inches is I mean, and everything else is above average, but like arm length that short, it's really, really hard because you have to be insanely instinctual. And there have been a guy that got drafted, I think in the 4th round, I think he was even a Pro Bowler. I'm double checking. Nope, never a Pro Bowler, but has had a good career. Yes, he was drafted in the 4th round. Jordan Whitehead. He has very, very similar measurables. So he's like one of the few outliers that you can find that works out. That sub 5'11", in that mid 190 range, and even Whitehead's arms, and I know it might seem nitpicky, but even Whitehead's arms are 1.25 inches longer than Bowman's. Like Bowman's arms, I've never seen this. Like I've never, like when you look at the percentiles on like Mock Draftable and stuff like that, I've never seen a guy come in the 0 percentile for arm length. And so like
he is the baseline.
And so that's the thing. It's an outlier pick. And that's, if you look at any profile on Bowman, it's always going to say like he can be overly aggressive and miss tackles or inconsistent tackler or something to that nature. Well, I think a lot of it is he's got really short arms. And so it's hard for him to wrap, especially when you're that, undersized at 5'10", 190. So, and then you get into the freaks, and the special athletes and that stuff. And that's kind of how that goes in the draft, right? Just like then in the 6th and 7th round, you just start throwing, you just kind of start throwing things at the wall to see what sticks.
Right. A guy like Jonas Sanker, I know he's a guy that Mel Kiper has mentioned a few times. Where is he going to be a day 2 or day 3 guy? He's got production.
Yeah, he'll be a day 3 guy. I mean, he's a little bigger at 6 foot 206, had good numbers, 4.48 40, really good and above average,
very good
vertical
tackling. He led the ACC 2 years in a row in solo tackles. So in terms of the type of safety, the Cardinals have a safety like that in Budda Baker, who's incredibly tackle productive, and Sanker was that. He did break up 11 passes for Virginia in 2023, but has 2 career interceptions. But he's a guy that he's definitely a box guy, isn't he?
Yeah, and that's what you have to look at. It's like you have that in spades and signed. But the one thing about Sanker is he is a phenomenal special teams player.
That's where he looks at that would be something if the Cardinals draft a safety, they're going to have special teams upside. And let's not forget, now granted, Budda Baker, they traded up in the 2nd round for him. What did he do his first year? He was a special teamer and a Pro Bowl special teamer until the safety he got hurt. It was a pretty good safety. He was having a pretty good year here, and I can't remember his name.
Was it Rashad Johnson?
No, it wasn't Rashad Johnson. It was a guy they brought in free safety. They brought in as a free agent that year, and it was his only year. He broke his arm or something. I think it was the last year he played. I'm going to have to look that up. 2017 Cardinals, and I'm going to kick myself.
But yeah, I mean, so that's the thing is you look at it overall. This is it's a position where they are loaded, which is, great. They've got a lot of talent. Tyvon Branch, by the way.
That was the one, Tyvon Branch.
But there are a couple guys that you can, you look at. You mentioned Sanker, another one, RJ Mickens out of Clemson, the guy that like kind of blew up the combine, and you're like, I don't know where he's going to fit with this whole thing. But Marquise Single out of Kansas State. I mean, Single came in at 5'11", 200 pounds, and then ran a 4.37 and jumped out of the building. So like you go, he's a guy that can play special teams. He was a team captain. Those are the guys that you take in the 6th, 7th round. And by the way, it's Sigel, not Single. I apologize. But yeah, I mean, those, and those are the guys that end up getting drafted there, because that's where you take safeties like him and one more guy, Kitten Crawford out of Nevada, 5'11", 202, and he ran a 4.41, but then jumped 41.5 inches. So like, again, a guy that's probably never going to be an every down player, but he's going to be in the NFL for 7, 8, 9 years as a special teams contributor.
And with that, those are names to know about the safeties. Coming up next on the Rise of Secret podcast, the Star Cardinals talk about. Let's talk about another position that doesn't have a lot of depth, but we could see a guy drafted early. That's inside linebacker. That's coming up next on Rise Up See Red.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
We're back on the Rise Up See Red podcast, Best Our Cardinals Talk on the Web. We're jumping from safety to inside linebacker safety because it's kind of we're kind of overlooking the position, but inside linebacker is legitimately a position of need. However, this class is, would you say it's extremely top heavy with probably the first 2 or 3, and then after that those are just day 3 guys that you get?
Yeah, I want to go over 5. So I think there's 2 day 1 guys with the bullet. It'll be interesting to see what and how they kind of grade those guys. And again, just depends on what you're looking at. We're going to go off the consensus big board, but then the problem with the consensus big board in this instance is the number 1 guy is not on there, and that's Jalen Walker out of Georgia. So
when we
Walker
talk about him as an edge guy, but
yeah, so Walker's getting looked at as if you go to Lance Zierlein's rankings, he's a linebacker. If you go to other rankings, he's an edge. So he's a tough guy, but he's the guy. And in our community mock draft through SB Nation, that's who I picked at 16 because I was like, dude, and by the way, I don't think there's any chance Jalen Walker's on the board. So that's not who I think they're going to pick. But in that scenario, in that way, Jalen Walker at 16 would be a slam dunk because he's a guy that can play will linebacker in this defense. And then he's a guy that you can start to utilize off the edge in packages and stuff like that. So he's a guy that never comes off the field. The kind of consensus number 1, but again, you kind of like, all right, where do we grade him? Where do we use him? Jihad Campbell out of Alabama. Campbell is the kind of prototype build. 6'3", 235, ran a 4.52 40 at the combine. I mean, there's not a lot of negatives to come by with Campbell.
No, he's really good sideline to sideline. He can move and he can rush off the edge as well. So and that's the thing. So what the Cardinals like what they have in Mack Wilson. Say they want Mack Wilson to be the Mike this year. Jihad Campbell's kind of the perfect guy to have next to him, wouldn't it be?
Yeah, and the one thing with Campbell, and it's a conversation we have all the time about linebackers in general, is I do worry about his instincts. He looks a little slow in recognition, but he's such a superior athlete that he makes up for it. But he's a guy that can play, like you said, that will linebacker position. He can move down on the edge, and he's got to continue to build that anticipatory stuff. However, he has things that you can't teach. One, he's fantastic in coverage, just absolutely electric in coverage. So from there, you're like, well, that's, I'd take that.
Yeah. I mean, he does like the thing to concern. He had the labrum tear. He had surgery.
And that's what I was going to say. That's the biggest question is his surgery was after the combine. So he did the combine, which is super admirable. But nobody can get a follow-up in terms of how healthy he is during the top 30 visits. And that's a thing that, I mean, if you're drafting 16th overall, aren't you going, I got to see if this guy's going to be healthy for this season, right? Like, and so that's the thing. So we can say, and we can say with assurance that, maybe there's a reason they brought in a guy like Akeem Davis-Gaither, right? Like they look at it and they go, hey, if Campbell's there, we snatch him up and we worry about the health in year 2. Because we don't feel like we have to get him on the field immediately. He can heal up and play. The next guy that I love, if there was a pick to be made at 47. This is who I would take, depending on how round one goes. But that's Carson Schlesinger. He's a day 2 guy out of UCLA, a guy that they haven't interviewed, but they've interviewed his teammate Olu Odafonwe. And I talked about him on the site the other day. Odafonwe was kind of a guy that was basically DOA in terms of draft stock, and now he's being talked about in the 3rd. I haven't even seen 2nd round when he moved outside as pass rusher. To coincide with that, you got a guy in Schlesinger who came in and became a day 2 with a bullet linebacker prospect. The biggest thing with Schlesinger is you kind of looked at him and you're like, he looks a little light in the pants, right? Like, and then this year he becomes a first team All-Pro. He finished with 136 tackles.
The country in solo tackles with 90. Now, he did like his college stuff is Sports Wrestler, the college football database, had him listed 6'2", 210. He's clearly bulked up as he came in at the combine at 242. So he has added some size to him. The question is how much. What do you think his actual playing weight was? Was it in the 230s probably, as opposed to what it was listed from before?
I would think he played in the 220s, and he's continuing to get bigger. The things you have to remember with Schlesinger is, 1, he was a walk-on. 2, he was a special teamer, so he felt like he needed to be athletic enough to move and run. But he came into the combine at 242, and then he tested out of this world. Just jumped out of the building, 39.5 inches at 6'2", 242. And so this is, this is where you have to make a call, right? Schlesinger instinctually is way, and I mean way above Jihad Campbell right now as a linebacker. He just understands and reads to an extent that is insanely difficult to teach and prepare a guy for. All that being said, is he a guy that you feel like can play in the 230s or 240s? And is he a guy that can hold up if he has to play in the 230s or 220s? Those are questions that you and I can't answer, right? But this dude looks the part. He instinctually gets it. And he is the best at diagnosing and making tackles out of any of the linebackers in this class, in my opinion. And that's why I would take him at 47 without hesitation if Walker and Campbell aren't the picks in round 1. A couple more guys that we should mention that could go on day 2, so round 2, round 3. Demetrius Knight out of South Carolina. Knight is older. He was at, and he's been around the block a little bit. Was at Georgia Tech in 2019, Georgia Tech in 2020, Georgia Tech in 2021, and then Georgia Tech in 2022, but only played in 4 games and redshirted. Then he went to Charlotte. So Charlotte is that no, that's a FBS school now, right? Anyways, and finally started and was fantastic, and then ended up going to South Carolina and really blooming into this guy that is going to be a day 2 pick. The problem is he's a 6-year player, so he's going to be 25 this year. That's always tough. So you're looking at it, and something we talk about, and I don't remember if we talked about it on this show, but I think I've mentioned it before. Linebackers are kind of like running backs, right? Like, if you get them in the 3rd round and you get 4 years out of them, or maybe even a 5th year, 6th year, you're happy. But like, they kind of, you kind of use them and lose them, right? Like, they get banged up because they're on the field for usually 98 to 100% of the plays. And in today's game, These guys are playing at 6'2", 235, but they're running sub 4, 640. So they're freak athletes having to run into 300-pound linemen all the time to try to make these plays. So they just go really quick. That's my concern about Knight. If he's there at that in that 76 range, I don't think that's an issue. Obviously, having not drafted one in round 1 or 2, but before that, I would steer clear. I like him as a player, so I don't want anybody to think I don't like him. But those are my concerns about him. And then the last guy is the other Georgia linebacker, but he's light, 6'2", 224, Smell Mondin, excuse me.
Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Tested really well, 4.58 40, really explosive broad jump, 10 foot 10 inch broad jump, and then was a top 30 overall recruit, and then started for 3 seasons. Now there's 2 things. He's missed some games with some lower body injuries, which is always a concern for me with an undersized guy, but he is an insanely instinctive and physical player for his size. And I know people are saying 224, that's not small, but for a linebacker, it's small. And he might be the best coverage linebacker in this draft. And so if you're talking about, you mentioned, Mac earlier. If you're talking about Mac and you go, oh man, with Mac, he's the Mike. Mondin, he's the Will. Like, I don't have it. There's like, he's the guy, and he is explosive. He can run. He tackles well. He's just like, he's been banged up, missed time in 22, missed time in 23, missed a lot of time in 24. And the way he plays, the physicality he plays, I mean, it's a lot like Buddha. And Buddha, I think, has done a really, really nice job of being able to avoid, the big hits and being run over and things like that. But man, that's the thing about Mondin that concerns me the most, is that he's going to be a guy that just can't hold up. But again, in the 70s, I'm willing to take that risk, because you're talking about a guy that you're like, all right, if I get 4 years out of him, and if I can get 15 plus games a season for 4 years, that's a win. But I just don't know with the concerning injury history if you're going to even get that.
2 names that I'm imagining are probably going to be solid day 3 options, but they were the headliners on the defenses in the national championship game. Jack Kaiser for Notre Dame, Cody Simon for Ohio State. Do they have a future in the NFL in terms of what they can do?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Simon's a big guy. Again, he falls into I think he's been around since the first Obama administration, if I remember right. No, I mean, he's been around for 5 years. I think he was a redshirt too, so I think 6 years even. But like, this is a dude that is instinctual, understands the game, and makes plays on the ball. 6'2", 230. But he's not athletic. So like, you're taking a shot, and to your point, that's why you're going to draft him on day 3. You're going to take a guy that is going to end up being undersized, or a little undersized in the 230s, high 220s, doesn't have incredibly long arms, and isn't the best athlete. Like, so you're basically like, all right, I trust your instincts to the moon. And that's, we've seen those guys. Who was the kid out of out of U of A, that did a little stint with the Cardinals too, but got drafted by the Browns. Anyways,
I just play, and he's still playing like in the UFL.
Yeah.
Oh,
But people will know who I'm talking about and scream at us for not remembering the name. But yeah, that's who he reminds me of. I mean, his high end comp that I've seen that I don't mind is like Blake Martinez, who's had a really nice career. But I mean, Blake Martinez has been on like 4 teams in that time in the NFL, and he's again, if that's what you get in the 4th or 5th round, that's a hell of a pick. I mean, Blake Martinez has been around, and I think last year was his last year. Yeah, 4th round pick, and he started 79
Scooby
games.
Wright.
Scooby
freaking Wright.
Thank you. Yeah, and so and Martinez started like 80 games in his career. So again, you're not looking at it and going, this is a negative. Like you're saying, oh, this is a positive thing about Simon. Like that would be the high end, but that's the problem with guys like that and Kaiser's kind of in that same bag, right? Like Kaiser is not the best athlete. He is for sure older. He's been around the block.
He started in 2019.
Yeah, so he's been around forever. Again, same type of thing. 6'2", 230 linebacker. Like nothing bad.
He's on his 3rd NFL contract by now.
Right. Right. Will be 25 years old in September. Very average athlete, but super instinctual. And has been a special teams captain for years. So again, you're talking about a guy that you're probably taking in round 5, 6 that is going to be around forever in the league, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, but not a guy that you're drafting early. A couple other guys we should mention: Chris Paul Jr. I don't think he's related to Chris Paul, but he's a really intriguing guy. I've seen some people mock him in the 2nd round. I disagree wholeheartedly. He's undersized. The first thing,
6'1", 222, under 30-inch arms.
And again, if he's 6'2" and 242 and he runs a 4.63, you're fine with that. But everything else, like you said, but he is a guy that is really instinctual, and he's physical for his size, and he's a downhill guy. If you got him in round 4, or like you had a trade back and you ended up with an extra 3rd round pick, I think that's the perfect utilization for Paul, right in that area. And he's a guy that I can see being successful and playing in the league. It's just going to have to be in a defense that is able to utilize his talents. A guy that I've seen kind of matched up with him, Diane Henley, the kid that came out of Washington State by way of Nevada, that went late in the 3rd round to the Chargers. I like that. Like that's the same type of player I see, and I think he would be, again in that range. I think he'd be a good fit. Danny Stutzman out of Oklahoma, a little bit bigger, 6'3", 233, really good times at 4.52. Not super explosive in the jumps, which not shocking to see that based on his film, but he is a really, really good run defender, extremely physical, but he's not, like I said, he's not explosive. So like the question becomes, where does he fit, and how much can you get out of him? A guy I've seen him comp to, that's been a good player in the NFL. I wouldn't say he's been, great. He's had really good seasons, but like Pete Werner, out of Ohio State, and he went in the 2nd round. I don't see any way that Stutzman goes in the 2nd round, but I've been shocked before. But he's a guy, I've seen, Jermaine Pratt, another, comp that I've seen. Jermaine Pratt's been fine, right, in Cincy and for all those years, but again, not a guy that you're like, oh man, I wish the Cardinals had a Jermaine Pratt type player, right? Like, and
No, not really. But this basically is the linebacker position philosophically. Is it what makes sense? At least what the Cardinals are likely doing is you do with good enough until you find someone special.
yeah, and that's I think what they keep doing, and that's the whole like, continue to throw things at the wall type thing. And I know people are like, well, you got to go get one, but it's like, look, the best linebackers in the NFL, the best ones, you either take a guy that is insanely instinctual, that has been phenomenal, like a Roquan Smith, right? Like that you took in the top 10 and he became an all-pro type, or you get lucky and you get a Fred Warner. I mean, that's the thing that gets me is like everybody's like, oh, you need to find Fred Warner. It's like, well, Fred Warner was drafted in the 3rd round. Like nobody wanted Fred Warner. The Cardinals could, the 49ers could have taken Fred Warner 4 different times. Zach Bond was on his 2nd team. Like he was basically an afterthought. I mean, Zach Bond started 14 games in his career for the Saints. They spent a 3rd round pick on it. So a lot of it's just luck. I know people don't love to hear that, but a lot of it's luck.
And the luck does mean you do have good scouting,
right.
But it's like the Brock Purdy thing. They were lucky because 7th round quarterbacks rarely turn out to be anything in the NFL, and they were lucky because they completely whiffed on the Trey Lance one. But yeah, let's move on from that. Coming next on the Rise of Your podcast, Best Our Cardinals talking with. Let's dive into the cornerback position, a position the Cardinals love to draft. That's coming next on SFC Red.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Back on the Rise of Secret podcast, Best Our Cardinals talk. The Cardinals love cornerbacks. They have drafted 5 in the last 2 seasons, 3 last year, and over the last 2 years, 3 picks in the top 90 have been to the cornerback position. And yet, that doesn't mean they're not going to take a cornerback in round 1, as Will Johnson is getting mocked more and more often to the Cardinals, a guy that was probably viewed as a top 10 pick, not, in the months before, but now could see a little bit of a fall because, well, he doesn't have the great speed, but he's got the playmaking. He's a great cornerback. Travis Hunter, yes, he's special. He's going to be in the top 3 he's going to be picked number 2 overall. So that's great. Daniel Jeremiah has 6 or 7 cornerbacks in his top 50, and one of them is Travis Hunter. But Will Johnson comes in at number 2. What is really good about him, and is the long speed really a concern that we should have?
No, and that's just based on how the Cardinals use deploy their corners, and I wrote about this when I wrote about Will Johnson, and I think some people took it as a negative, and I really didn't mean it that way, but what do I know? But Will Johnson's like high-end comp to me is all-pro James Bradbury. Remember, Bradbury was an all-pro in his 1 season with Jonathan Gannon. Now, I'm not going to say that Will Johnson's going to be an all-pro if he comes to the Arizona Cardinals. That's an outlandish statement to make. But I could see that being kind of who he is as a player, is a guy that has an insane amount of success because he fits into the scheme so well. Similar size, I mean, obviously Bradbury's a little thicker as he's gotten older. But when he came out of wherever he came out of, I know it was a small school, Samford, he was about 210. Will Johnson's a little taller, a little bit leaner at 195. But remember, Bradbury ran a 4.5, didn't have great jumps. 3-cone and short shuttle were just okay. And he's had a great career. That's the guy that I see, and the player I see Will Johnson having the chance to be. And again, it's, I know people will be like, well, you're saying like a small stretch in Bradbury's career. And it's like, yeah, but that's what Will Johnson could be potentially every year. I mean, that's how good he was.
That's what you hope, that he could be like that consistently.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, the long speed isn't a concern to me because of that. I mean, I know everybody is excited and gets excited about these burners and, but the guy was a freak in 2022. As a freshman, he was one of the best, if not the best corner in the country in 2023 as a sophomore, and he won defensive MVP of the national championship game. I mean, that's how good he was. And then obviously was a AP All-American, third team this year, despite 6 games, and that's how good he was. But that goes to the concerns. I mean, this is a guy that's been nicked up 2 years in a row. He's coming off a hamstring that has prevented him from even being able to work out. Those are concerns, man. I mean, I don't know any other way to say that. And so, like, if you get the medicals and you say the medicals are great, then it's all go. If you say, I don't know, I mean, this is a guy that was nicked up all the time, couldn't do X, Y, or Z, then I don't think you could pull the trigger. And that's just the reality of it. And here's the thing, from what I'm hearing, he's going to go, he's going to go to Las Vegas at 6 or something like that. So it may be a moot point at this point. So then we move to Jahdae Barron. We've talked a little bit about him in one of our mock draft shows where we broke down a mock draft. But the more they talk about Jahdae Barron, you know who he kind of reminds me of in terms of what they think he can do at the next level? It's a guy I actually personally disliked for a number of years on the Cardinals NHL role because he failed as a boundary corner. But when he found it, when they put him in a playmaker role, playing nickel, playing safety, he ended up with a really nice NFL career. Is Jahdae Barron kind of that guy? Because people seem to be more talking about him as playmaker and less as boundary cover guy. Yeah, and that's where I'm at with him. I really like the player, but I see a guy in Barron who is like a big nickel safety. I don't know how much you want to use him outside consistently, and that's where my question is with Barron, right?
So with Barron, if you take him, you have to believe that you can put Garrett Williams and play him on the boundary full time, right?
Yeah, and that's the question. But here's this, with the Cardinals zone heavy scheme, he's a guy that can play, and he's a playmaker. So I don't mind it, but again, I think he's going to go. I think he'll probably end up getting drafted by the 49ers. So I don't think he'll even be on the board when the Cardinals go up.
If that's the case, if Barron's off the board, Johnson's on the board, is there any other cornerback worth looking at number 16, or only looking back at any trade back scenario?
Yeah, I think trade back scenario. I don't think there's another one that you would want to take. Got 2 guys that are getting like end of round 1 mention though, so we can at least mention it. I don't know if the Cardinals have met with Maxwell Hairston, the Kentucky corner, 5'11", 183, blazed a 4.28 40. But the thing with him is he's got good arm length. He's lean, but I mean, not overly lean, not like the kid out of Mississippi State a couple of years ago, right? But he's a guy.
This is more like DRC. He's more like DRC build.
Yeah, and plays a lot like DRC, who ended up being, fantastic, right? And the Cardinals traded him away, whatever. We're not going to talk about it. So, yeah, right, exactly. So, you look at him, he's a guy. The question I have with him is, again, and he had a good season last year in 23, but smaller, like we just talked about, or leaner, like we just talked about, and missed 5 games with a shoulder injury this year. Again, I'm just like, that's, I don't know, not my jam, because he is actually physical for his size. And that's my concern, is this is a guy that likes to be physical, likes to mix it up, and he's lean and already had a shoulder issue, and he's a freak athlete. So, those are always concerns. A guy they have met with, I know, and he is a tall, long, really talented guy who made the jump from the Sun Belt to the SEC, and so that's what you like to see. And then transferred from Bama over to Ole Miss this year, and that's Trey Amos. Amos is a guy that you look at, and he's a good athlete, but he has really good instincts, and he likes to be physical, and he's a little more built for that physicality. Now, he's not huge by any means. I don't want anybody to think I'm saying that, but coming in at 6'1", 195 with a really good long wingspan, that's a guy that you look at and you go, okay, I like his cut for how he likes to play and what he does. I've seen some comps to like AJ Terrell. Obviously, we talked about that the other night. I'm not a huge fan of comping guys to all pros, but AJ Terrell went in 16th overall. So he's a guy that, if he went in the back end of the first round, it would make a lot of sense. The one thing I'll say that kind of scares me about Amos is he's a little bit of a gambler, and we know that can backfire on guys. So that's, something to keep in mind with Amos. From there, I think Siobhan Ravel, who we'll talk about in a second, would have been, but coming off the knee injury, I think he ends up going on day 2.
Another guy that probably would have been a first-round pick is Benjamin Morrison out of Notre Dame, who has apparently a connection to the team, that his dad's a team chaplain here. Although I thought it was with Washington. I thought I saw Adam Schefter mentioning that Matt Morrison's dad is a team chaplain for the Cardinals. So, and he's from Phoenix. He went to high school at Brophy.
To Brophy.
So, but Ben Morrison, like you mentioned, he'd be more of a, because he's got that hip injury that he's coming off of. Could the Cardinals pull off a Garrett Williams type scenario, getting him in round 3 and then redshirting him essentially and building him for the future if you get a guy like that?
Yeah, and he's, like you said, the local connection, multiple local connections, and then just the talent. I mean, he was a guy that was going to be a day 1 pick, like you said, and then just was injured. He was a very good corner in his time at Notre Dame. Really good, strong ties to the community. The biggest thing with him, again, is he's a little bit of a gambler and things of that nature. But I mean, freshman All-American, had 10 pass breakups and 3 interceptions last year, and then only played in 6 games, but had 4 PBUs. So it was really, on the rise to be a first round type of guy before the injury. So, I like Morrison. Another guy, Siobhan Ravel, he's another interesting one, right? Just because he's the long guy in the draft, 6'2", 194, almost 33-inch arms. Played at Lewisburg College before making the move over to East Carolina, and then was really, really good at East Carolina. But the question is, what's his athleticism, right? So you got
and he's coming off the ACL tier too,
right? So you can't even test him. You're not going to know. You're going to have to really rely on your scouts and your medical staff to have this guy in the right spot. But I think if he would have been able to tested, in that sub 4.5 range, he probably would have been a guy that you were talking about with Amos and Hairston.
Other guys stood up. The one guy that stood out in terms of athletically, if you look at Ohio State's Darian Porter, 6'3", 195, 33-inch arms, 4'3", 40, 6'7", 1'3" cone, 36.5 vert, 131-inch broad jump. Where does he fall in terms of, obviously he's a freak, but where does he fall in terms of where he might fall in the draft?
I like him a lot, man. I really do. And a guy that's been good, not great in the NFL, that he kind of probably comps out to pretty well. But again, win the 5th round. So we're talking hugely different here. Zion McCollum. You remember Zion McCollum out of Sam Houston State 3 years ago?
Yes. And Porter's older because he's been at Iowa State since 2019, so he's pre-pandemic. So he is older, but
yeah, and he's a really productive player. But this is what the issue is with Porter. The biggest issue, and you mentioned the age. He didn't play a whole lot, Jess. So he played in 12 games as a reserve last year. So 23. Played in 12 games as a reserve the year before in 22. Played in 13 games as a reserve in 21, and then played in 12 games as a reserve in 2020. That's if you're that big of a freak of nature, why did it take you 6 years to get a start? And I'm not going to try to throw shade, but at Iowa State, it's not like you were at Bama, not like you were at Georgia. It's not like they're producing these day one draft pick guys, right? Or you're getting 5-star recruits. You're at
but
Iowa State.
He was really good on special teams. He blocked 4 punts in college, really good gunner. So at least there's that side. So that makes him a day 3 guy, right? That you could find him probably round 5, likely.
I think he's going to go on day 2, Jess, because you don't find that size and speed ever.
Interesting. Well, then that's fun. A guy that if you want a guy who can make plays on the ball, how about Noel Williams out of Cal, who had a nation leading 7 interceptions last season.
Yeah, and Williams is a guy that a lot of production, but he didn't test exactly well. And he's a guy that, while he's played a ton, he is a guy that I think gets away with being more instinctual than he is elite athletically. 6 foot, 200 pounds, sub 31-inch arms, 4.5 40, just average jumps. But second team AP All-American, when you're talking about a guy that, he had 9 pass breakups, 16 passes defensed, and you talked about 7 INTs, led college football this year. That's going to be the question mark. Is he a gambler that got away with it playing at, bad schools against bad competition, or is he a guy that you can win with consistently? Kobe Bryant out of Kansas is another one that's, been around the block for a while. He's had some good games. He's had some good film, and you watch him play, and you see what he can do. And, I wouldn't hate him on day 3 either, Jess.
All right. Anybody else before we wrap this up? Because I know you got to get out of here. Any other names to throw out there for day 3?
I mean, Denzel Burke, another local kid, been at Ohio State what feels like forever. He's a guy that, has good movement skills, been productive, but had really big ups and downs. I think he would make sense on day 3. And that's really it. I mean, the problem is with these corners and just like safeties, like now you're kind of taking stabs at guys, right? Based on athleticism and those type of things.
Right. And with that, we will wrap up this edition of the Rise of Sierra podcast, Best Our Cardinals Talk. We'll be back for one more positional preview show where we will talk about quarterbacks, running backs, and tight ends next week, as well as our 7-round hopes for the Cardinals. That's Seth Cox. I'm Jess Root. Thanks for listening as always. We will be back again soon.
Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Thanks for listening to the latest edition of the Rise Up, See Red podcast. Listen to previous episodes and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Audioboom, or many other podcast platforms so shows are delivered directly to your mobile device. Please give the show a 5-star rating and always support the sponsors who support the show. We'll be back soon for the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Rise Up, Red Sea, Be Red, See Red, and of course, Rise Up, See Red.
Rise up! Rise up! Rise up! Rise up!
How to have fun anytime, anywhere. Step 1. Go to ChumbaCasino.com.
ChumbaCasino.com. Got it.
Step 2. Collect your welcome bonus.
Come to Papa welcome bonus.
Step 3. Play hundreds of casino-style games for free.
That's a lot of games. All for free?
Step 4. Unleash your excitement.
Woohoo!
Chumba Casino has been delivering thrills for over a decade. So claim your free welcome bonus now and live the Chumba life. Visit ChumbaCasino.com.